Okay, let me just get this out of the way. Let's just start off with the most annoying question you're probably going to come across anytime this week. But have you ever been offended? Has anything ever offended you? And this is like one of those questions that it's like our country has gone just hog nuts about this. It's like everybody's offended about everything. And everybody just seeming like if one person's offended, then everybody else has to somehow arrange their lives around that one person's little bitty bit of an offense. And so this is a big question. Have you ever been offended? And like I said, our world and our country has gone nuts. Because like, for example, one person makes a really bad joke and then they get fired for it, but then you get like a whole bunch of other people making also really, really bad jokes and equally bad statements, but they get praised and lauded for it, which shows me something very interesting about the hypocrisy of our society. And that is this, that when people say they're offended, odds are that offense is not about a universal issue. Odds are that offense is actually about a personal code of conduct or some type of power play. And then it's about them. It's not really about true justice. Okay, otherwise there would be consistency across the board. And then because it's about personal conduct, because it's about personal code of ethics, because it's about a power play, we tend to find people offended over really silly, stupid things. Like maybe you've run across this. People offended over the names of sports teams. Okay, and people try to even ban sport teams because they're named the Cleveland Cleveland Indians. They're like, oh, you can't, or the Washington, oh, you know them, right? Or the Atlanta. Yeah, it's just, they're like, no, you can't have that. I'm offended. You're not even Native American. I don't care. I'm offended for them. And this it tends to go. Or recently I ran across this one that just blew my mind, that women are becoming offended at chivalry. Okay, they're becoming offended at chivalry. So if a guy opens the door for a woman, she is to be offended. And there's all these articles written in Cosmopolitan. I know I shouldn't read things. Also written in Newsweek, also written in New York Times, also written in just all over the place. Okay, there's these articles that says that if a man opens the door for a woman, she should be offended because he's treating her as unable to open the door for herself and not treating her as equal. And then he is requiring her to say, thank you. And she should look at the guy and say, what, you expect me to kowtow to your actions that now I have to thank you like you're some type of rescuer? And on that, and they're like, this is offensive. Chivalry is offensive. Women should be treated as equal. And here's just a little thought. Let me just plug this in since we're on this topic and I don't get to talk about it that often. Let's side note for a moment. I fear any country that treats women as equal as men. Women should never be treated equal as men. They should be treated better because the countries don't treat their men well. Okay, but men are not treated well. And so women shouldn't be treated as equal, should be treated better. So it's like you open the door for the queen. Why? Because she's the queen. So hello ladies, if a guy opens the door for you, what is he treating you like? Queen. Okay, so anyway, so people are all offended about chivalry and it's bizarre. Okay, it's really bizarre. Or here's what I ran across just this past couple days. You ready for this? I go on vacation where there's like no internet for like 4 days. I had like little seizures over it. My eyes starts twitching at about the third hour. I was like, I don't got I don't And I'm like, why doesn't the internet And then people were like, because you're on a campground. We don't have a cell tower. Well, why don't you get one? Like, well, we don't have money for one. How much does it cost? $20,000 for a tower. How much did you pay for the band? They said $20,000. I said, you spent it wrong. But anyway, so I get back to find out that we're not supposed to say the word childless anymore. Did you guys read this or hear this article? Did you guys run across it? We're not supposed to say childless anymore because it implies there's a void in someone's life that's supposed to be filled with child, and therefore it's an insult to those who don't have children. So you're not supposed to say childless. You're supposed to say child-free. I'm not making this up, okay? I'm not making this up. Okay, they're like, you're supposed to be child-free. And I'm like, well, I'm offended by child-free because it implies that children are the problem and are the burden. So how about this? If saying that one person is offended means we have to change everything, let's all make a pact together. Let's all be offended by offended people. See if we can get rid of them all. But this is what's going on. It's absolutely nuts, okay? Now, there are some things to be offended about. Okay, there are some things that we should speak about and rail against. That would be situations like people in power abusing those who are not, or the situations of corporations poisoning towns for the sake of making money, or slavery or forced slavery, human trafficking. These are things that should be spoken against and should be absolutely treated as being offensive issues. Okay, we should say we're offended that somebody's being exploited, and we should be able to rail for their safety and for their independence and for their security and for their dignity. And those are things that should be offensive. Those are universal, big, true justice issues. Not, I'm offended by you holding the door for me and paying for the meal. I should be able to pay. I'm a woman. It's like, come on, what's wrong with the free meal? Come on, isn't that a good deal? I'll take it. Come on. Okay, but there are real issues to be offended. Now, this is where Jesus is at in Matthew chapter 23. Okay, this is where Jesus is at, because he is offended that the religious leaders who are supposed to be responsible for the spiritual development and health of the people, but the religious leaders are leading people away from God. That's what they're doing. And Jesus is offended at that. So what Jesus does is he has been on the defense for a long time. So now in Matthew 23, Jesus changes his tactics. It is fascinating that he has been quizzed. He has been tried to be trapped. People tried to trap him. They've tried to trick him. They have insulted him. They have come at him. Even his own mom came at him once, and his brothers came at him trying to stop his ministry. Jesus has been on the defense. Now the time has come. The whistle has blown. The inning has changed. The period has rolled over. Jesus goes from defense to offense. That's what he's going to do. And he is going to offend the offenders. And what we're going to talk about today is going to be offensive because Jesus is insulting the other people. So what we're going to look at is Jesus offending people. And we're going to take offense at that maybe. We're going to struggle with that because we're going to be like, but that's you don't talk like that. You don't say that. You don't tell that to people. That's wrong. But guess what? Jesus did it. So we're going to have to question this whole issue on what's right and wrong on that because Jesus was not a sinner. He was perfect. He's God in the flesh. Okay, he is absolutely, that's who he is. He's Jesus. So when he says things that we look at it and we go, oh, he said that? And we're going to have to realize, yeah, he did. And it's going to challenge us. So if you find yourself going, oh, I can't believe that's in my Bible. I had no idea. Let it challenge you. Okay, let it challenge you. Let it convict you. Let it just ask yourself why it is that it's bothered. We should look at Jesus and say, go Jesus. That's what we should do. Not go, oh, Jesus, why did you say that? We should be like, wow, look what he said. Look what he did. Go Jesus, because he's being a champion for the people. Okay, but it's going to be shocking. I just want to lay that out there because I know sometimes people will hear things and they go, oh, no. And I just want to warn you up front that Jesus' comments here to the religious leaders borderlines the PG-13 area, okay? So I know you're already looking at me like, don't you go there. I'm not going to go there. Jesus is. Okay, so I'm vindicated. Okay, I'm just letting you know. If you get mad at me, you're mad at Jesus on this. I'm just going to quote him. That's all I'm going to do. Okay, I'm just letting you know. I'm going to try to help us best as appropriately as possible to understand in our context what it was like for the religious leaders to hear him. Because that's going to be the hard part. We get so used to old language that we don't always understand what he is saying and what it means, how it was received. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to help us understand how the Pharisees would have heard it. So that if you end up going, oh, you're like, I'm shocked and offended, you will know how the Pharisees felt and why they tried to kill him. Okay, because that's what's going to happen. The Pharisees are going to get so offended, they're going to want to kill Jesus. They're going to plot and plan to wipe him off the face of the earth. That's how offended they're going to get. So, are you ready for this adventure? Some of you are like, yeah, just do it. Let's do it. Some of you are like, you should have slept in. I'll watch it online. Okay, so we got this battleground set. Okay, Jesus is on the offense. That's what's been going on. He has told people, don't be like the Pharisees. He has told people they're hypocrites. He has told them that they preach, but they don't behave like they preach. And Jesus laid that groundwork. Now he is going to turn to them and give them what is known as the 7 woes. Okay, and when you hear somebody say, woe to you, that is not a compliment. Right? It's like saying curse upon you or to HE double hockey sticks with you. That is kind of what Jesus is saying when he says woe to you. Okay? He's like, may God's judgment of damnation fall upon you. That's this woe word. So it's a very harsh word. So when he says woe to you, Pharisees, he is like curses upon you. You know, whatever that bad thing can be laid upon you. That's what's going to be happening here. All right, so here comes the woes 1 and 2. Now, before we do woes 1 and 2, I want you to notice something fascinating. If you were to look in your Bible right now, in Matthew chapter 23, and you see verses 13 to 15, you will notice that in some of your Bibles, verse 14 is missing. Or, if your Bible has verse 14, it has a bracket around the front and back of it. And then it'll have like a little note at the very, very bottom of your Bible that'll say, most manuscripts or ancient manuscripts do not contain this verse. Because Matthew, in its original understanding and original writing, did not have verse 14. It was added significantly later. And here's why. Because the book of Mark also contains the 7 woes. And the book of Mark contains verse 14, but the book of Matthew does not. Now, after the Byzantine manuscripts were written, and we get a lot of our translations of the Bible happening during the during the medieval time period, what had taken place was some scribes noticed that the stories were different. And they didn't think about that Matthew intentionally did not use verse 14, that he was doing this for a purpose in mind, and so was Mark. And so they write the same story with different emphasis. And so they wanted them to be consistent, so they took verse 14, if you will, the verse that was missing from Mark, and put it into Matthew to make them consistent. Because they were all about how do we make the Gospels consistent and put them in timeline, exactly how do we do the synoptic Gospels? How do we take Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, put them all together and put them in chronological order? Because the Gospels are not written in chronological order except for the book of Luke. It's the only one chronological order. All the other ones are not. Just because it happens in chapter 23 does not mean that it took place after chapter 22. Okay, so they're not in chronological order. So they started changing some things here and there. So our Bibles, as we learn this and discover this, we make little notes. It doesn't mean that our Bibles are in error. It just means that there are some differences that have taken place that we've recognized, so we know what was originally intended. Okay, so what we're going to look at here in Matthew chapter 23 is verses 13 and 15. We're not going to look at verse 14 because that belongs in Mark. When we do a Mark series down the road, we'll cover that verse then. Sound good? So, woes 1 and 2. Woe 1, verse 13. Woe 2, verse 15 reads as this. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert. And when you have succeeded, you make them twice as much the child of hell as you are. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to see this is getting a little bit absolutely gruff. And what he's getting at here is he is saying that the Pharisees are more about rules than they are about a relationship with God. They're more about religion than they are people. Okay, that's what they're all about. They're completely legalistic about it. They're like, we got rules and more of them. We got over 600 rules, and we got rules about the rules and rules on how to enforce the rules about the rules. And they're all about the rules. And if somebody shows up, they got to follow all the rules. Like they're just supposed to know. And they're supposed to follow it. You know, it's like in today, or churches don't have all about rules today, right? There's no legalistic churches today. We fixed that problem. Yeah, no, we had a problem today. Ever had somebody sit in your seat? Okay, you walk in, you've been attending church for like 10 years. You even donated money for that pew to exist. And then you come in, you're ready to worship, and a visitor had the audacity to show up early. And they're sitting in your chair, and you look, and you're like, and someone says, you all right? Like, I don't know where to sit. Well, why don't you just sit down somewhere? But that's not where I sit. Well, where do you usually sit? Well, that person is. We'll ask them to leave. No, they might not come back, and we want their money. And that's how the attitude is, okay? And so there's the problem. And so people get all bent out of shape. Or somebody comes in and they got holes in their knees and their jeans. They're like, oh, they're not dressed for church. And what if that's dressed up for them? You know, what if that's, so people just get all offended and they go all shocked because they're all about their rules. You know, it has to be done a certain way. What if we did communion backwards? What if when we have communion today, we did the juice first? Would you be like, no, we don't do that? Why? Well, you see, the Bible says when you eat the bread and you eat the juice, yeah, but it didn't mean it had to be in that order. You ever go to a restaurant and drink something first? I do that all the time. In fact, the drinks are the first thing that come to my table. Isn't that like what it is for you at the restaurant? Don't the drinks come to your table first? The waitress or waiter shows up and goes, what would you like to drink? And then they leave and they come back with drinks. Why? Because they want to fill you up with the drink, so that you eat less, because whatever you don't eat, that's what the bartenders and everybody eat. Just kidding. But why does it have to be in a certain order? Don't worry, we'll do it in order this week. I'll kowtow to your rules. Okay, but see, we have rules. Here's what ends up happening, though. Here's what ends up happening. When the church becomes all about rules, okay, and they all are about this has to be this way, and the world has to conform to our rules, which is bizarre because the world isn't Christian. People don't need to form to our rules before coming to Christ. They need to come to Christ and then deal with their lifestyle, but not the other way around. So it's always mind-boggling to me that we try to preach morality to lost people when we should be preaching Jesus to lost people and deal with the morality afterwards. It's like we get that backwards. You know, people are not like, it's not like a dishwasher. You don't clean it before it gets clean. You know, that's just bizarre. You know, Jesus is a shower. You know, that's what cleans you. You don't get clean before getting into a shower, do you? How weird would that be? I'm going to take a shower, so I'm going to wash my feet first outside, just spray myself off, hose myself down, then I'm getting in the shower. That would just be weird. We'd all look at you like you've gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Okay, and so that just doesn't work like that. So when a church is all about rules, here's what happens. People start thinking that the message from the church is that heaven is boring and hell is fun. That's what it looks like. That heaven, that's where the old people go to play dominoes and pray King James, right? But then hell, that's where all the beer and the hot wings and the video games are. And that's what ends up being communicated. So then church is boring and hell is awesome, and that God is useless and Satan is, you know, a party, and God's a buzzkill. And that's what gets communicated when all it is about rules instead of relationship. That's why when God started with Adam and Eve, he didn't have like a bunch of rules. He just like, hey, let's have a relationship. And he walked together and he says, hey, by the way, don't eat of this. But everything else, have at it. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself. Because that's what God wants. He wants us to enjoy life, not be the party poopers. How sad it is when I go to Christian concerts, okay? I went to a concert just last week. It was the Karen Peck and the New River was there, right? Okay, and so they're singing, right? They're going at it. And when they got done, you know what I did? I clapped my hands, smiled real big, and I became a woohoo girl. Okay, well, they don't have woohoo boys, so I guess I have to go with the girl term on them. I'm like, woo! You know, I'm like, yeah! And other people were like looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I kid you, I got stared at by people. Like, huh? Even my own cousins who were with me were like, oh my gosh, he's so embarrassing. You know, so it's like, but have fun. You know, we're at a Christian concert, we're praising God. We should be able to stand up. We should be able to clap our hands, raise our hands. We should be able to have a little bit of movement and have some fun with it. We should be able to be excited about God, not, I've been saved for 37 years. I'm so excited about life. You know, that is not the Christian life, but that's what gets communicated. And when people are attracted to that, when they are attracted to the laws and the rules, and they're attracted to the grumpy, blah, 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 and that's what they want, that's why they become twice as much the son of hell, because they become magnified of their teachers. So when you get people that are out there just being jerks and people are attracted to the jerk, they're going to be twice the jerk. That's what's going to happen. That's what Jesus is telling the Pharisees. You point to converts thinking that you're doing it right because you're growing. You think that what you're doing is appropriate because people are growing and you're getting bigger in numbers. Well, guess what? You're going to hell, and all the people that you're with that are coming with you, they're going to hell too. Aren't you guys just doing happy about all that? You know, you're just like Satan. Isn't that a great thing? Congratulations. See, and that's Jesus' message. That's woes number 1 and 2. But Jesus doesn't stop there. You think that'd be a sermon all to itself, right? You think his point would have been made. But Jesus doesn't stop, because how many woes are there? 7. How many have we covered? Ready? Number 3. And this one's a long one. This goes from verse 16 all the way to 22. Okay, so check this out. Woe, number 3. Woe to you, blind guides. Pause here. This is hilarious to me. I love this, okay? Blind guides. Can you imagine what this would be like? How many of you ever went on a tourist trip where you're in a bus with a tour guide? Anybody ever have a tour guide? Okay. Could you imagine if that tour guide was blind? What would that be like, right? You're like going through Chicago, or you're taking the Indy tour of the Historical Society of Indianapolis, right? You're on that little bus, and the blind guide goes, okay, and on your right, I have no idea. And on your left is something. You know, how would that go? And so Jesus is like, you're leading people to nothing. You're blind guides. So he says, woe to you, blind guides. If you say, if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing. But anyone who swears by the gold of the temple, it is bound, or by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath. You blind fools. Love this. Love this. He called them a fool. Okay, the word is moria, it means moron. Isn't that awesome? You moron. Isn't that a compliment? They say, you blind moron, you unperceiving idiots. That's what he's saying to them, okay? You blind nincompoops. Which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? Oh, you also say, if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gift on the altar is bound by that oath. You blind men! Now this one we don't have to change much because every woman here understands this statement. Because every guy here has a hard time finding their keys when it's right there on the table in front of them. Okay, so people are, wow, wives like, yeah, it's this morning. You blind men, which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Therefore, anyone who swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And anyone who swears by the temple swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. And anyone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and by the one who sits on it. So in Woe 3, what he's talking about is people trying to sound holy in their oaths and vow making, but finding loopholes so they don't have to do anything about it. Okay? Now, kids do this all the time. Adults do it too. I'll get there in a second. Let's start with the kids. Let's build this up. Kids do this all the time. They say, I promise I will do it. What's this? What's this? My fingers are crossed. It means it didn't mean anything. You see? And then when kids are like, yeah, I promise. Yeah, let me see your hands first. Why? I want to see your fingers. Are they crossed? And they'll say, see, my fingers aren't crossed. See, I'm fine. See? Oh, my shoelaces are crossed. Ha, 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 ha. You know, and they'll constantly find ways to get out of the whole process. They'll get out of their oath and out of that completely. So they don't have to have their actions match their words. But adults don't do that, do they? They'll never talk to somebody and say, I'll pray for you, and then never do it. You know, in fact, here's what I find fascinating. This is fascinating. They'll hear somebody talk, and they'll say, well, I'll keep you in my prayers. And what that really means is, I'm done talking to you now, and I want to find a way out. That sounds polite, and that's what I'm going to say. Because if you really want to pray with them, you would stop what you're doing right then and there and pray with them right then and there. You wouldn't say, I'll keep you in my prayers. You say, you know what? Let's take a moment. Let's pray about this right now. If you were serious, that's what you do. Then you wouldn't have to worry about having to remember for later, because you already did it. And see, but we try to get out of things. We don't want to hear the long story. We don't want to hear the bellyache. We want to get on our schedule. And so we say, well, I'll just keep you in my prayers. And we sound all holy and just, and we leave, and then we never do it. And if we do remember to pray, we never stop to ask ourselves, how could we be part of the answer to that prayer? How could we actually involve ourselves in their lives and help them find healing, help them find moments of grace? How can we help them? How can we help relieve some of the burden that they're feeling? How can we be part of that? What can I do to put my actions, my wallet, my feet, my abilities, my talents into helping them find some relief from the struggle and the pain that they're dealing with? And instead, we just say, I'll pray for you, and we just let it go. Maybe God wants you to be the answer. Maybe he wants you to be the one that steps into their life, but we'll never know because we are trying just to get out of it. So you see, sometimes we're not that different from the Pharisees than what we would like to think. And so how is it that you try to get out of the oaths that you try to make? How is it you try to justify certain behaviors? I've seen men justify being married and still look at porn because at least they're not having sex, so it's not adultery, and at least it's something that's not hurting anybody. And so they think that's okay, and they think that that's not violating their vows with their spouse. And they justify it. They're just like the Pharisees, blind guides, hypocrites. And so on the issues go. Adults aren't that different than kids. We just hide our fingers better. And so Jesus continues, just in case you thought this was already getting convicting, just in case you thought this was already getting rough, we're not even halfway through. You ready? Woe number 4, 2 verses 23 and 24. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. Now, this is really bizarre illustration here because gnats are unclean, but so are camels. And so this idea is you're so nitpicky about this, but guess what? You're doing this, which is also unclean. And you don't recognize that you're being a jerk here. And so these are people that are they tried again to look really holy. This is kind of what this looks like. Someone that says, God, I love you so much. Here's 1/10 of my paycheck, and also 9 peppercorns for me and 1 peppercorn for you. And I would like 9 tea leaves for me and 1 tea leaf for you. God, here's my offering and 1/10 of my cinnamon. I love you, Lord. That's what that looks like. They're all nitpicky on that, making sure it's right smack dab where it's supposed to be, but they're jerks. But they're jerks. They don't love people. They're not helping people. They're not being kind to people. They're being absolute jerks. And so that's Jesus' point here. He's like, man, you're all about these small little details on how your tithing is. You got your budget book laid out exactly, but you don't use any of your money to help anybody. You don't use any of your time to help anybody. So you're straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. And the swallowing the camel is kind of a funny imagery. And I'm glad Jesus went this way because the opposite is a little more disturbing. Okay, but that is Jesus' point. Okay, he's kind of like, man, you're so nitpicky on things, but you're missing the bigger problem here. You're missing the larger problem. And so he goes on. Woes 5 and 6, verses 25 and through 28. Check this out. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrite. You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee. First clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You're like whitewashed tombs. Yeah, you look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. So here's what is going on with this one. These are the people that, again, they try to look holy, and so they dress to look holy. And they try to keep themselves appearances to looking holy. And they try to talk and pray with words that sound holy. So they pray all King Jimmy. You know who these people are. When they stand up to pray over the Thanksgiving turkey, you get all upset. And you're like, oh, this is going to take a half hour. Because they're like, Heavenliest Father who art in heaven, we thanketh thee uponeth thy bird. And we ask, Lord, that as we beseech this bird, that you beseech us upon this bird. And may the bird filleth up our gullets, that we might be able to enjoyeth thou's provisions. And they just kind of go off. You're just kind of like, man, just give me the knife and I'll carve this turkey. Let's just get on with this. And they all try to look all holy. People do this with their cars. They drive like little demons, but they make their cars look holy because they got Christian bumper stickers. Or maybe they do this. They get this emblem on their car, right? The Jesus fish emblem, right? And then maybe once that gets too popular, which it did, people were like, well, now I feel unholy because everybody's got a fish emblem. So I know I got to make the fish emblem on my car holier. So let's add Jesus inside of it because that makes it holier. And then someone went, wow, they're really holy. They got Jesus in their fish. I got to take it up a notch. I'm going to make it Greek because everybody knows Greek is holier than English, right? So I'm going to have ichthus, which is Jesus Christos Theos Huios Sigmer, Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. Okay, that's what that stands for. Okay, and so they're like, see, I'm holy. The world saw this holy battle and they thought they'd get in on it. And so they changed it to a Darwin fish because it grew legs, and so evolution, woohoo! But then the holy Christians had to say, I'm more holier than all the other Christians. I got a truth fish that'll eat your Darwin fish, ha ha ha. And then you got the other people that are the naysayers. They don't want to participate in this because they're too holy for that. So they just do this. And okay, so this is the battle. But meanwhile, they're breaking the law, cutting people off and waving one finger at people that they don't like. Meanwhile, they drive like hell on wheels. It's like, here's the thing. If you're going to advertise on your car that you're a Christian, drive like one. That means obeying the law. It means driving where you're being safe. It means driving where you're trying to be polite to other people on the road. Drive like one. Otherwise, if you're going to drive like hell on wheels, then take all your stickers off, because why confuse the issue? That's why you'll notice there's no bumper stickers on my car. No, I try my best to obey the law. I really do. And so it's just the thing, though, is that people you go into their homes, and they got a picture of a mountain with a Bible verse, because somehow the Bible verse makes the mountain more majestic. And they try to act all holy and Christian. But then you look at their lifestyle and you realize it's not consistent. That their lives don't match the verses that's on their walls. Their lives don't match the images that are on their wallets or their keychains. And they do all this stuff. It's amazing to me. People put all these Christian things all over the walls of their home, and you'll ask them, why do you have that? And they say, so that anybody that comes into my house will know Jesus and they can see the Bible. But here's the thing. No one's ever come into their house. Because they don't invite lost people in. They invite Christians in, they invite family in, but they don't invite lost people in. They go, I don't want their kind in my house. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to say. I feel uncomfortable around them. Then what's the point? People walk around with their Christian yellow book so they can make sure they have a Christian plumber and a Christian repairman and a Christian TV man with Christian phone service and Christian providers for their internet and Christian this and Christian that. And then they sit there and say, see, I'm surrounded by Christians. Isn't this a wonderful life? Yeah, well, you're not salt or light to anything. Who's the lost person that you're trying to witness to? Who's the lost person that you're trying to share the love of Jesus with? The goal is not to become a little commune where we're all together huddled into our own little city. Some Christian groups are doing that now. They're building their own little subdivisions, and they're getting it where they have their own Christian barbers and their own Christian restaurants so nobody has to leave, and they're calling it like a Christian utopia. And they're like, see, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this so God-honoring of a community? I'm like, no, that's a cult. That's really dangerous there. Where's the influence on that? Where's the reach into people that are hurting on that? How are you helping anybody figure out Jesus that way? See, our lives are all closed. Sure, it might look pretty, like a pretty, pretty tomb. But as far as lifestyle for really honoring God, it's like a dead man inside. It's like rotten bones. Completely missing the point. But Jesus doesn't want the Pharisees to miss his point. So he ups it up a notch even more. Just in case you haven't been already realizing that this is really brutal upon them, in case you haven't been a little bit about Jesus' words, because imagine this, these are the political power people that he's talking to, all right? The Pharisees are the one who help maintain law and order of the land for the Jewish people. They have the ability to arrest and to execute. They are judge and jury, okay? That's who he's yelling up against. And he's offending them. He is ticking them off. He is insulting those people. So here's what's going to happen as he goes into the seventh woe, and he really ups it up. Verses 29 to 36, check this out. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrite! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets, because they're holier than their ancestors, you see. They wouldn't have killed prophets like they did of old. They wouldn't have killed Elijah and Elisha. They wouldn't have done the persecution like their grandpappies did, because they're holier. So, Jesus continues, you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead then, complete what your ancestors have started. In other words, he's telling them, your dad and grandpa and great-great-grandpa killed a bunch of prophets. Go ahead. Show us who you really are. The apple has not fallen far from the tree. You're as much of a perverted murderer as they are. There's prophets here today. Kill them. You got it done with John the Baptist. I'm the culmination of the prophets, Jesus says. Kill me. Here I am. And so he continues on. He says, you snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore, I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers. Some of you will kill and crucify. Others of you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And so upon you will come all the righteous blood that has been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I tell you, all this will come upon this generation. And so Jesus is saying, you guys think you're all holy because you're not as bad as someone else. Well, guess what? You're worse. That's what he's saying. You're absolutely worse. And he calls them a brood of vipers. Now check this out. Here's what brood of vipers means. The word brood does not mean a gathering or a collection. It means offspring of. Okay, you offspring of vipers. What he's saying is, you son of a snake. Now we know what, we have a son of a statement, don't we? In our culture. We have a son of a statement. That's what Jesus is giving them. You son of a snake. Now, here's how this works. It may not be a female dog. It's worse than a female dog. Here's how this plays out. In order to be a son of a snake, your mom would have to do what with a what? Because snake gives across the imagery of whom? Satan. You son of Satan. Okay, or maybe he went all like Austin Power on these guys. Yeah, baby, your mama went and banged the devil. Yeah. You know, that's what he's telling them. This is what your mom did. Your mom was in the backseat of a Chevy knocking boots with Satan and gave birth to you. You might be like, oh, that's offensive. Yes, it was. It was not a compliment. This was a harsh, boldly, almost vulgar statement Jesus gave to the Pharisees. Because he's not just insulting them, he's insulting their mom. And you know that even bad guys love their mama. Right? You guys watch Westerns? Bad guys love their mama too, okay? And so this is a big, bold statement that Jesus gives. Very, very bold. And then Jesus is concluding with all this. I want you to check this out. His conclusion here is so fascinating. It is so left field. We don't expect it. Okay, so he is saying, man, if only the religious leaders have listened to God, listened to the prophets, man, how things might have been different. But that's not what the reality is. And so he offers a cry. He offers a plea. He offers a final statement. And I want you to see this because this is a really odd metaphor for Jesus. He compares himself to a chicken. A mother hen specifically. Check this out. Then he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, You who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate. Everything you know is about to be destroyed. That's what he's saying. It's going to be gone. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Now, I want you to hear something about this. It's very fascinating. Long time ago, before Jesus was ever born, a couple hundred years before he was born, there was a play that was written. It was translated into English not all that long ago. Here's what it is. It's called Trojan Women. There was a movie made in the 70s, but Katharine Hepburn called it. But they changed a lot of the play that was done. But this play was written before Jesus was born, written by Euripides. And here's what happens in this play. Okay, Queen Hecuba is the leader of the land. She's queen, and the city of Troy ends up being destroyed because the people were unfaithful and unwilling to follow the rules of the land, the rules of the king. Okay, and so they were being disobedient, and the king was like, you guys got to stop, you're rebelling, you're not being like you're supposed to be, and the people kept being insubordinate, kept being arrogant and violent, and so the city was eventually destroyed. As the city of Troy is destroyed, here's what happens in the play. Okay, in the play, you get fire on the stage, not real fire, they didn't use pyrotechnics like we did, they took like wood and whatnot and painted fire, and they moved it from side to side. Okay, so there's fire happening, and people are screaming and crying and dying. And then there's Queen Hecuba in the back, and she looks over all the destruction. She opens up her arms in this play, and she cries out, "O Troy, O Troy, how I long to have gathered you like a hen gathers the chicks beneath her wings. But you were unwilling." Isn't that interesting? Here's what ends up happening. That play became very popular with authorities and kings. And it got to the point that every time a theater was built, the opening ceremony of the inauguration of the theater, that play, Trojan Women, were the first play that was ever played. And there was an archaeological dig done in the 1950s, and they found in the Middle Eastern area a theater that was built. And it was called the theater, it was built by the people of the Nazareth. Okay, so it was built by carpenters that were from Nazareth. And Jesus' dad was a whom? Carpenter. That doesn't mean working with wood. Carpenters work with stone. So don't think of it as a wood building. It was a stone building. They were more like masons than they were woodworkers. Okay, that's how carpenters were. And so they worked with wood, but they worked predominantly with stone. And they were always hired in. Whenever Rome came in, they built that theater in the Israel area. And the people from Nazareth were some of the workers that were brought in, and other workers from Jerusalem were brought in to build this theater. And then once it is opened up, the first play, as accustomed, that Caesar would have played would have been this play, where you hear everybody's required to see it. It was always good attendance, right? It was against the law to miss it. So here's this play of this queen crying out to Troy, telling the city of Troy how she longs to gather people like a chick gathers like a mother hen gathers her chicks beneath her wings. And now here's Jesus. He's seeing what the Pharisees are doing. He knows the destruction that's coming. And what does he do? Jesus does something profound. He quotes a play. Maybe that's awkward for some of you, because you think that Jesus just came up with stuff on the top of his head all the time because he's God. Why would he ever use culture? Well, how did God make people? He used what? Dirt. Okay, he uses his creation, always has. When he parted the Red Sea for the Israel to run across and then closed it for killing out and blocking out the Egyptians, what did God use to cross the sea? An easterly wind that came in and parted the sea. See, God uses his creation. And here Jesus uses culture. Jesus quotes a play because everybody saw it. Everybody knows it. It'd be like a pastor today quoting something from Titanic or Avatar or Star Wars or Jurassic Park, trying to say, here's this statement, and it applies in this theological truth in this area. And that's what Jesus does. And he says, destruction is coming. And what Jesus is saying is, how I wish I could take all of you and shelter you from it. He's saying, I want you. He's telling the people who are twice as much the son of hell, I want you. I want to gather you under my wings and hold you tight. But you're not willing. He calls out to the crowd, I want you. I want to gather you in my arms and hold your head against my chest and let you know it's okay. But you're not willing to let me hug you and hold you. He's calling out to the Pharisees, I want you. Teachers of the law, I want you. I want to hold you like a mother hen gathers its chicks, but you're not willing. You're so bent on your own status quo, your own sense of significance, your own sense of what's right and wrong, and your own crazy rules that you just won't let me gather you. Destruction's coming. I would love to shelter you from it, but I can't because you won't listen. That's this cry of Jesus. So he pictures himself in a way that they would understand because they know Queen Hecuba. They know the play and how she is crying and tears fall from her face as she says, Troy, you're dying and I wish you wouldn't. If only you would come to me. If only you would listen to me. If only I could gather you and hold you. But you guys are just so arrogant. And that's Jesus' cry here. He's trying to get it across. See, he is saying harsh words, not to be a jerk. He is saying hard words to produce soft hearts. That's what Jesus is wanting. Sometimes that's what it takes. And at the end, he just breaks down. And he cries out, oh, people, I want all of you. I want the Democrats and the Republicans and the Libertarians. I want everybody to come to me. I want to hold you all. I want the broken. I want the prostitutes. I want the geeks. I want the people that think that the Novas are a good car. I want everyone to come to me. People who wear turtleneck sweaters, come to me. People who like rap and reggae and also like country, come to me. It's okay. I can love you. I can hold you. If you would just come. I don't care if you wear stiletto heels and G-strings, come to me. I want you and I want to hold you and I want to love you. I want everyone who's broken. I want people with piercings in places you don't have places. I want everyone that is able, that can hear my voice, to come. I want to hold you. I want to show you salvation. I want to show you forgiveness and grace and mercy. That should be the battle cry of the church. That should be the voice of us, as we are supposed to be the voice of Christ. We should be able to call out to the world, you who are weary and brokenhearted, come to Jesus, find rest. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you act like. I don't care what you think is right and wrong. I don't care about any of that. Just come to Jesus. Let me show you salvation. Let me show you his grace and mercy. Jesus wants you. He wants all of you. So tell me, people of Pleasant View Baptist Church, what description of Christ are you showing and declaring to the people of your community today? When they hear you speak, what are they hearing? What are they getting glimpses of? When they hear you share stories, where is the hope? Where is the grace within it? How are they understanding God better because of the story you shared? Don't be like the Pharisees. Be like the heart of Jesus, the Messiah. Because that's who we're supposed to be emulating. It's Jesus, Messiah. Is that a word of prayer?